So, in the first session, we discussed some of the challenges and some of the opportunities and solutions to finance the city of tomorrow. In this second session, that is co-organized with the European Commission, DG IMPA, and with the Council of European Development Bank. And thanks for the partnership. What we are going to discuss is the role of city-to-city partnership to help national and some national government to mobilize additional financing for urban development. Lamia, our director, launched the report harnessing the potential of city-to-city partnership to finance urban development this morning. So most of the messages and discussion will really be around this report that you can see on the screen. That is a partnership with the European Commission DG IMPA. So my first question, we have a very diverse panel with speakers representing international organization, development bank, national and some national government. So my first question is for our partner in crime, Marlene, that have been working with us for many years now on decentralized cooperation, city-to-city partnership. The one we are launching today is just the last of our joint reports and cooperation. So the question for you, Marlene, is what is the role that city-to-city partnership can play in the implementation of investment initiatives such as the EU Global Gateway, and in particular in mobilizing additional financing for urban development? Marlene, you have the floor and you have 5 minutes.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for the invitation and a very warm welcome from my part to all of you. Yes, we have launched this study together with the OECD because, as you do know, I hope that we have a new strategy called Global Gateway, which is in place since 21. And I think I do not, say too much in a sense if I would say it's really a paradigm shift, the way we work with our partner countries. And one really new element or one new way of doing is that we really work very closely with the banks. I see that the KfW is here. We do it also with the European Investment Bank. And we do it to leverage more money. And it's a very easy kind of calculation. If you give grants, €1, you can invest with €1. If you do with banks, and we give now guarantees, you leverage by 10%. So you have in an amount 10 times more than if you give grant. So this is, I would say, the essence of the Global Gateway strategy. And you have heard also before from the colleagues from the United Nations Capital Development Fund that within the guarantees we do and the amount that is foreseen to be invested altogether for 7 years is 300 billion. That within this fund, this amount, there is foreseen a window, a guarantee for sustainable cities. Having said that, we all know, and you have said it, and many of you have said it, that the money itself is not enough, that there's a lot of capacity building to do. And this is why we see a huge opportunity of decentralized cooperation within this Global Gateway strategy. And where I see it is because we do not only change the way we finance our cooperation with partner countries, but also radically the way we do it. So we focus in every partner country on very few really huge projects. Most of them are hard infrastructure projects, but there are also others like vaccine production in Rwanda. And with our partner countries, we identify these huge and really they go on for 10 years, 20 years, very long-term projects. Which of those have also the potential for really, creating growth, processing value-added, high-quality jobs, high standard of environment. And one example which maybe gives you a little bit of flavor how complex this whole projects is, or the way we do it, is the Lobito corridor, where we know we need more capacity for the train connection, but we talk about agricultural value chains, we talk about critical raw materials, we talk about battery production in Africa, so added value there, not only taking out the critical raw materials and exporting to Europe. And with that, we hope really to have locally economic growth, job creation, and so on. And we see that in this one, the local authority, they really are basically within this project, in a sense that, yes, we will ask them what they think, how this plays out, because they are the most close to the local people. But then in many cases, the investment we take is then managed by the local authorities. And here, as it is a very targeted approach, I think it's also possible to have very targeted, decentralized cooperation. So a cooperation between cities in the OECD countries with cities in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, on these very specific, huge projects where the cities are around. They will implement part of the investments, they will maintain, like the train, the infrastructure. And with the city-to-city partnership, we can work on all this capacity building. Before it was mentioned, domestic revenue mobilization. And we have, in the study that the OECD did for us, had a very simple example, which maybe for a municipality in France or in Europe is like not a big revelation. But there in Uganda, they just changed from traditional way of collecting the domestic taxes to digital. And what came out, and that was with the help of the partner city, it came out that just in terms of collection, the tax that is already foreseen, the factor of what they got was 25. So they got 25 more millions of tax revenue, which already was foreseen just by having it digitally done. So I think there will be possibilities to do this targeted and really teach the cities to plan, urban planning, financial management, capacity in all different kinds of areas, so that they can play the role. And just having a little bit of forward-looking agenda also, we will do at the end of this year a big conference, which we always do as DG IMPA with, I see here UCLG and all our partners, city association that we have all over the world, and the European, I see the CMR, to see whether on very concrete cases, very concrete huge projects, a sort of matchmaking can already be done so that we can bring the decentralized cooperation into the Global Gateway projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much for highlighting this paradigm shift with the Global Gateway, and also for bringing this very concrete example from Uganda on how to collect tax digitally and the impact that it had on the city. And we'll be happy, of course, to contribute to the conference at the end of the year. Let's now move to our second speaker, and our second co-host is Elisa Muzzini, Senior Technical Advisor from the Council of European Development Bank. Elisa, could you please tell us, in your view, what is the role of development banks like CEB in supporting and in working with city partnership? And if you can provide some concrete example of what the bank is doing, please.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and host the session with you and the European Commission. So let me start by saying that the Council of Europe Development Bank is an MDB that has exclusively a social mandate. And so for us, the partnership with cities is essential. And we say that cities today face interconnected challenges that cannot be addressed in isolation. So the climate vulnerability, social fragmentation, the economic inequalities, they demand a system-wide approach and not piecemeal solutions. And we heard example of systemic approaches. So the city partnerships really help to break down the silos and to create opportunities that otherwise would not emerge. But we also see that the most powerful partnerships are the ones that extend beyond the city halls. So we are seeing an evolution as cities are moving from service providers to connectors, bringing together governments, private sector, social economy organizations, and also multilateral institutions into a collaborative ecosystem. And so only through inclusive networks can we mobilize finance at the scale that's required to meet the challenges that we face today. So what's the role of MDBs in this partnership? So I believe that MDBs play a very catalytic role. And I'd like to focus on three areas: impact, inclusion, and innovation. So impact, as we heard, it's about linking financing with measurable outcomes. And partnerships enable us to engage early in projects. And this is not just a nice to have, it's really an imperative in the current context, because if we engage at early stage, we can provide the technical support that's needed to, for instance, integrate climate adaptation, social equity consideration into the project at the design stage. And so the message here is that financing cannot be addressed as sort of like standalone downstream issues, but really need to be integrated from the concept stage, and partnership sort of provides the platform to do that. So the second point is about inclusion. So it's about creating partnerships that work for cities of all sizes, because in the current context, leaving no one behind also means leaving no city behind. And we have seen the impact of territorial inequalities and social cohesion. We heard about small and medium-sized cities facing large constraints in accessing finance. And so city networks, as well as national municipal associations, play a key role as actors to bring together secondary cities, build capacities, and also MDBs. They play a key role through, for instance, intermediate financing to close this financing gap for lagging regions and small and medium-sized cities. So we talk also about innovation, which is about tapping new opportunities. And in this context, MDBs can be also partnered in innovation. They can help test new ideas that can emerge to partnerships. They can help scale successful experiments and also share solutions across city networks. And just want to finish to say that, well, these commitments also translate for us into some concrete actions. So we are at the CB, one of the founding partners of the European Resilience Partnerships that has been established by ICLEI. And it's really about breaking silos and joining forces to better help cities and regions. With UNHCR, we have co-developed the first meeting of the community of practice for refugee hosting cities, so how they can mobilize funding and financing for local integration. And well, last but not least, we cannot talk about impact, inclusion, and innovation without reliable data. So I like to commend OECD and UCLG for the WOFI that we have been supporting at the CED for the past editions. So thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. Thank you very much, Elisa. Thank you also for highlighting the importance of engaging development banks at the early stage of the policymaking process. This is something that we are also one of the findings of our work, to engage private sector and investment banks at the early stage to avoid mismatch of priority during the implementation process. Our third speaker is now we go to a national government and another partner of the OECD on this topic for some years. And I'm happy to give the floor to Anja Wagner. Anja is the head of the Federal States and Local Authority Division at the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany, BMZ. We have been working for many years together, Anja, now. So can you tell us what are the main mechanisms through which Germany is supporting city-to-city partnership to strengthen knowledge and capacity to mobilize public and private investment for sustainable development? You have the floor, Anja.
Thank you, Stefano. One key feature of the DDC approach of the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development is the mix of funding instruments with additional support tailored for different municipal contexts. So instead of a blueprint mechanism meant to serve all the same way, this funding with advisory service mix is better able to leverage the knowledge transfer within municipal partnerships. When it comes to funding, German municipalities can access a wide array of financial instruments in support of establishing and strengthening city-to-city partnerships. Wide array doesn't mean this is necessarily a lot of funding, but it's a wide array, and there's at least something. The Servants Agency Communities in One World, a subsidiary body of the institutional setup of Germany's development policy, can provide funding of up to 90% and a total of up to 250,000 euros per municipal partnership and its corresponding project idea. Other fundings, for example, through GIZ, cover the payroll costs of seconded experts or the expenses of intermunicipal workshops and other learning formats. On the advisory service side, we have developed quite specific offers. One of them is the example of the so-called utility platform, which is made up of partnerships amongst municipal enterprises that provide technical advice during ongoing or completed investments. As you know, municipal enterprises are key players for investing in and operating the infrastructure of most basic services cities can offer, such as water, electricity, or waste. The utility platform offers experts from these enterprises to cooperate at peer level through consulting or coaching. As a result, improved management and operation capacities of municipal enterprises boost their attractiveness for investments and credit worthiness. And let us not forget that improved service delivery will increase trust in local governments. One partnership example of the mentioned utility platform is the municipal savage enterprise of the German city of Dresden that gained a lot of experiences from the system shift following the German unification in 1990. And it's now sharing this knowledge with its partner, the Lviv Vodokanal, a municipal water operator in Ukraine that is facing similar transitional challenges. Another example is our Connective Cities program, which promotes the global exchange of municipal expertise and peer consulting between German and international urban practitioners. Financial advisory service is a complementary service in the context of that program, so that ideas that come up in this peer learning also get into action, that they will be followed by some investment. Based on this mix of financial and technical instruments, German municipalities who engage in city-to-city partnerships can choose between different options on how to best support the financing and planning capacities in their partner cities. My ministry also supports city networks like eClay or the C40, all of which have a crucial role to play in sharing experiences amongst its city members. We also fund a city finance facility whose main objective is to utilize the strength of the network to develop bankable projects. This example may not be labeled as DDC approach at first, but it certainly features the idea to use municipal partnerships and networks for leveraging investments. Another key component and in fact strategic orientation of our DDC approach is to enhance the role of German municipal associations in driving the benefits of city-to-city partnerships. Our associations are municipal finance experts. And as we learned from OECD, the mobilization of funding and leveraging investments could be highlighted more strongly as a potential outcome of city-to-city partnerships. It may thus be worth understanding better how the financial expertise of municipal associations could be further tapped for decentralized development cooperation. We take home from this inspiring OECD paper and discussion today that our support to city partnerships bears a great potential to unlock subnational finance. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Anya, also for providing very concrete example, in particular the utility platform that is very specific feature of the German cooperation, as you also mentioned in the report that we are publishing today. Now, our next speaker, we go from Germany to Spain, that is another front-runner country in decentralized development cooperation, and they are the two main also donor in terms of ODA flows, Germany and Spain. So we have the pleasure to have with us Augusti Fernandez de Lozada Passos, who is Secretary for European and Multilateral Affairs and Development Cooperation of the government of Catalonia in Spain, and is also a big expert on decentralized development cooperation. Even before your role in the government, we have been working together for many years. So Augusti, can you tell us, based on the Catalonia experience, which kind of tools, platforms, and technical support the Catalan government is providing to its municipality to engage into this city-to-city partnership, and what has been the impact on the mobilization of financial resources? You have the floor, Augusti.
Okay, thank you very much, Stefano. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you to the organizers. Catalonia has a very, I would say, vibrant and dynamic ecosystem of municipal DDC. We have some leading organizations like the Barcelona City Council, our capital city, the metropolitan area, the provincial council, even the Catalan Development Fund. But we have also a wide range of very dynamic, medium-sized cities also fully engaged with DDC, with development cooperation. And thus, our government is fully committed to support this ecosystem and to unlock the full potential that decentralized cooperation has. The question here is how we can address this very challenging issue from a regional perspective. First thing I think it's very relevant is to involve municipalities, to involve local governments in the design and the monitoring of our own strategy, of our own public policy. We have a consultative body devoted to local governments, where local governments participate in the design of our strategy, in the design of our annual plan, and they find we have meetings every 3 months to monitor what we are doing through our development cooperation. We also operate a little bit emulating the European Union through what we call the Catalonia team. Catalonia team is a tool to operate together with municipalities in countries where we share partners and priorities. And I give you some example. We are working together with Barcelona, with the metropolitan area, with several municipalities, with the Catalan Development Fund in Colombia, for example, in Valle del Cauca and Cali, where we share not only priorities, but also partners. In Morocco, in the north of Morocco, in the region of Tanger Tetuan, the same. In Senegal, Casamance, in Mozambique, in the region of Inabambe. We also focus in promoting technical cooperation. We fully believe that mobilizing knowledge, expertise, and defining channels to transfer through city-to-city cooperation, this knowledge, this expertise, this capacity to innovate at the local level is crucial. So we also focus on technical cooperation. We also, Barcelona is home of some of the top city networks operating on a global level. UCLG is based in Barcelona, Metropolis is based in Barcelona, CEDAW is based in Barcelona, C40s or Eurocities have offices in Barcelona. So we are also supporting this ecosystem and we are convening with them to reinforce what we call the international municipal movement. Also, multilateralism. There are some agencies, specifically UN Habitat, that are specialized in human settlement. We work with them. We have offices of UN Habitat in Barcelona. So we also focus on this relationship. I mentioned before in the previous meeting, we are trying to explore the potential of localizing Global Gateway, of localizing global agendas as the FFD. I think we think that here there is a lot to be done, and this agenda has a lot of potential. And to conclude, we are currently working in the design of a specific program to harness this city-to-city cooperation, enabling cities to develop or to implement pilot projects, enable cities to exchange with their partners, to transfer. I think innovation here plays a crucial role to reinforce local alliances, not only through local governments, but also through local communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Agustin. Thank you very much. It will be very interesting to know the result of your attempt to localize the Global Gateway. We have some recommendations in our report, but it will be interesting to know what are your findings. Now we move to a local government and an association of local and regional government that we go to Christophe Rouillon, who is the Vice President of the European Committee of Regions, the Econ Commission, and is also the Mayor of Coulanges in France. So we are really glad to have you with us, Mayor, today. Could you please tell us, based on your experience as Vice President of the European Committee of Regions, what are the most promising mechanisms that city-to-city partnership can use to enhance access to finance for urban development? You have the floor, Mayor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Martin, de votre question. Permettez-moi de saluer les organisateurs, partenaires de l'OCDE, également la Direction générale de la Commission européenne, IANTA, et chacun et chacune d'entre vous, et saluer aussi le représentant de la Catalogne, puisque le maire de Barcelone est également membre du Comité européen des régions, qui est l'Assemblée des élus locaux d'Europe, forte de 340 membres. Le Comité européen des régions soutient ardemment le rôle des autorités locales dans les affaires internationales, en particulier dans notre capacité à pouvoir apporter des solutions innovantes aux grands défis de la coopération au développement, en particulier via la coopération décentralisée. À titre personnel, je suis depuis de longue date engagé dans ce soutien à la coopération décentralisée, à la fois au sein du Comité européen des régions, puisque nous avons été à l'origine des assises de la coopération décentralisée et également à la mise en place d'un site, un portail Internet qui compile l'ensemble des actions de coopération décentralisée, également en ma qualité de maire d'une ville dans la banlieue du Mans. Nous avons une coopération décentralisée depuis maintenant 17 ans avec une ville du Niger qui s'appelle Kouré, qui est dans un des pays les plus pauvres du monde, notamment pour faciliter l'accès à l'eau et également à l'alimentation. Donc, je vais me baser sur ma triple expérience, à la fois de maire, de membre du Comité européen des régions, également de partenaire de la coopération décentralisée. Nous sommes très conscients des handicaps qui se posent sur le chemin de la coopération décentralisée, en particulier les faibles budgets aujourd'hui, une certaine forme d'autocensure également sous la pression de l'opinion publique qui considère qu'il faut d'abord s'intéresser aux populations locales et pas aux enjeux globaux. Également aussi aux faibles capacités que nous pouvons avoir administratives et financières. Dans un contexte géopolitique, je ne vais pas vous le décrire, qui est plus focalisé sur la compétition, sur le chacun pour soi, sur la défense des intérêts particuliers au détriment des projets d'intérêt commun. Et tout cela limite de facto le potentiel de la coopération décentralisée qui contribue au l'amélioration de nos projets et du financement urbain. Néanmoins, cette conférence, comme celle qui a lieu aujourd'hui, est de nature à nous rassurer sur le potentiel qui est aujourd'hui existant, de voir aujourd'hui nos initiatives à la fois soutenues par l'OCDE, la Commission européenne, les États membres et les organisations internationales de premier rang. Permettez-moi de profiter de cette occasion pour mettre l'accent sur 2 points, sur la façon dont les partenariats ville à ville peuvent améliorer l'accès au financement. Le premier point, c'est la similarité entre les villes du Nord et du Sud, là où les coopérations entre les gouvernements centraux et ministères peuvent parfois mettre l'accent sur des différences de cadre législatif, géopolitique ou de contexte politique. La coopération ville à ville ramène à la dimension humaine au niveau pratique, à des sujets partagés de manière universelle entre villes d'Europe et d'ailleurs, comme l'accès de nos citoyens à des services publics de qualité essentiels. En termes de développement urbain en particulier, nos villes, les villes de nos pays partenaires traversent maintenant de manière accélérée une phase d'urbanisation que toutes les villes d'Europe ont connue au siècle dernier. De manière similaire, nous avons accès à des modalités de financement diversifiées et nos projets de coopération peuvent aider nos partenaires à asseoir leur crédibilité en capitalisant sur notre expérience et les leçons apprises pour faire face aux défis de développement urbain et mobiliser toutes les sources de financement public, privé ou internationaux. Le deuxième point commun, c'est deuxième enjeu, c'est celui de la durabilité et de l'inscription de nos actions de coopération décentralisées dans la durée. Et pour cela, on constate que beaucoup de villes ont des partenariats anciens. C'est le cas de ma ville, puisque cela fait maintenant près de 2 décennies que nous avons eu confiance, un partenariat entre élus et fonctionnaires locaux, avec la capitalisation d'une confiance qui va au-delà simplement des questions techniques. Et de ce point de vue-là, nous devons nous appuyer sur la connaissance des attentes du terrain, sur l'appropriation, qui est un des éléments fondamentaux qui fera que les fonds publics de la Commission européenne et des États seront utilisés de la façon la plus utile possible. Alors j'espère que les institutions internationales reconnaîtront notre rôle, le rôle des collectivités locales, à la conférence sur le financement du développement qui aura lieu à Séville en juillet prochain. Et cet événement, l'événement d'aujourd'hui, est une étape importante car il me paraît clair que nous ne pouvons considérer la reconnaissance de notre rôle comme un acquis. Nous devons continuer de créer de véritables coalitions et multiplier les alliances pour renforcer notre message au niveau global. Nous avons besoin de mécanismes de soutien spécifiques, mais également d'augmenter nos propres ressources pour la coopération décentralisée. Et j'ai lu avec satisfaction les travaux de l'OCDE qui montrent l'augmentation constante des ressources dédiées à la coopération décentralisée. Et nous espérons que la Commission continuera également à nous aider, et pas simplement sur des grands projets, mais sur des projets petits, car on sait très bien que ce sont parfois les petits ruisseaux qui font les grandes rivières et qu'il vaut mieux parfois utiliser des fonds de façon pertinente sur des petits projets que parfois utiliser l'argent sur des grands projets de façon non ciblée et parfois peut-être de façon un peu dispendieuse. Et de ce point de vue-là, j'ai apporté depuis longue date dans notre avis l'idée très simple que les collectivités locales d'Europe puissent apporter 1 euro par habitant et par an à la coopération au développement. Et c'est ce que nous apportons à notre modeste niveau dans ma ville de Coulennes, mais je sais que d'autres régions européennes font la même chose. Donc l'événement d'aujourd'hui est vraiment un pas majeur dans cette direction. Et pour le Comité européen des régions, il s'inscrit dans la droite ligne de notre partenariat fructueux avec la Commission européenne sur le sujet également en complémentarité avec le nouveau dialogue politique entre les Nations Unies et l'Union européenne, et également dans la perspective du Forum des villes et régions pour les partenariats internationaux qui aura lieu encore en décembre et qui montrera, je l'espère, que les partenariats ville à ville peuvent contribuer directement à la mise en œuvre de Global Gateway. Merci beaucoup de votre attention.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much, Mayor, also for this idea of the €1 per inhabitant that will maybe can be adopted also by other cities. Now we go to the last but not least speaker of our panel discussion before opening for questions. So if you already have in mind some question, please be ready with your nameplate. After the intervention of the French Development Agency, we'll have 10 minutes for question and answer. So our next speaker, we are really glad to have with us Hervé Dubreuil, who is the Deputy Head of the Urban Development Department of the French Development Agency. So Hervé, could you please tell us what are the main mechanisms through which AFD supports city-to-city cooperation and what has been the impact of this city-to-city cooperation in mobilizing additional financing for urban infrastructure and for urban development. You have the floor.
Bien, merci beaucoup et merci beaucoup pour l'OCDE pour cette invitation. Peut-être avant de répondre sur les mécanismes que nous mettons en place pour créer justement ce partenariat entre villes, rappeler un élément qui est important pour l'Agence française de développement, c'est la notion de sur-mesure, aussi bien en matière de financement qu'en matière d'accompagnement. Le sur-mesure en matière de financement est tout d'abord le résultat d'une analyse des besoins et de la demande. Nous y sommes beaucoup attachés. Au niveau local, bien sûr, avec, qui est, on le sait tous, l'OCDE est la première institution à lancer ce message et à le porter internationalement, c'est que le niveau local est le bon niveau d'intervention pour répondre aux besoins des habitants en termes de transport public, de gestion des déchets, de réhabilitation des quartiers précaires, d'accès aux services et autres, mais aussi pour mesurer l'impact en termes de décarbonation des infrastructures et de résilience des villes face au changement climatique. Le niveau national est important aussi, là où se pilotent les processus de décentralisation et de mise en œuvre effective des réformes. Alors, pour accompagner ce niveau local et niveau national avec les bons outils financiers, nous déployons 3 solutions financières. Je devrais dire 4, et vous comprendrez pourquoi. 3 solutions principales que sont le prêt souverain, qui peut prendre la forme d'un prêt directement à l'État rétrocédé à une ville, ou un prêt à l'État avec une garantie, ou un prêt à une ville avec une garantie de l'État. Donc, il s'agit là de la modalité la plus courante. Nous avons le financement non souverain, sans garantie de l'État, qui nous amène à financer en direct les villes. C'est une spécificité de l'AFD à laquelle nous sommes très attachés. Et enfin, des lignes de crédit accordées à des institutions financières publiques dédiées au financement des collectivités locales. Alors, je disais 4, parce que j'aurais dû y penser, mais en écoutant Madame Isner, je dois rajouter la garantie, parce que la garantie est un élément important que nous portons aussi pour le compte de l'Union européenne et qui permet de dérisquer les financements que nous apportons aux villes. Alors, le sur-mesure, je le disais, c'est sur les financements, mais c'est également en matière d'accompagnement, et j'en viens tout particulièrement à la question qui m'est posée ce matin. Alors, quelle que soit la modalité de financement, notre action concerne tout autant le financement de l'accompagnement en termes de planification territoriale, de financement et de gestion, de suivi et de déploiement des plans d'investissement. Et pour ce faire, au-delà des outils classiques d'assistance technique qu'on connaît tous bien, nous prenons avantage de notre présence sur le terrain dans les États étrangers, mais aussi dans l'outre-mer français, qui est un élément aussi spécifique à l'AFD et à la France sur lequel nous nous appuyons. Donc, la proximité de ces villes, des États étrangers de l'outre-mer pour mobiliser les acteurs français et faire émerger, renforcer des réseaux de villes et des échanges de pairs, entre pairs. Alors, pour vous donner quelques exemples concrets, nous avons tout d'abord la FICOL, la Facilité de financement des collectivités locales, qui fêtera d'ailleurs cette année ses 10 ans et qui est l'instrument permettant d'accompagner la coopération décentralisée des collectivités françaises auprès des collectivités locales des pays étrangers. Alors, au-delà de fonds permettant de financer des projets d'investissement entre les deux collectivités, françaises et étrangères, nous faisons également, à travers la FICOL, un appui directement aux universités, aux entreprises, aux associations qui entrent dans le processus de mise en relation de ville à ville. Alors, exemple, le projet Move Hanoï, cette FICOL qui permet de mettre autour de la table les différents départements de la région Île-de-France avec leurs pairs à Hanoï. Je n'entre pas plus dans le détail de cet exemple, mais l'idée là est de participer, accompagner la ville d'Hanoï pour travailler l'attractivité et l'intermodalité des transports dans la ville d'Hanoï. Le FEXT, deuxième outil, le fonds d'expertise technique et d'échange d'expériences, qui nous permet de mobiliser à l'international des établissements publics français opérant à l'échelle d'une ville ou d'un territoire pour apporter l'expertise nécessaire à préparer, alors dans un deuxième temps, un financement AFD. L'objectif, c'est de mettre en relation des villes pour ensuite déboucher sur des financements en matière d'investissement que l'AFD porte. Alors, le projet d'amélioration, je vous donne un exemple, projet d'amélioration de la qualité de l'air à Lahore, au Pakistan, où nous mobilisons actuellement, une mission a été organisée la semaine dernière, Air Parif, qui est l'Observatoire de la qualité de l'air en Île-de-France, et le SICTOM, qui est l'Agence métropolitaine des déchets ménagers d'Île-de-France, pour accompagner la ville de Lahore dans la collecte, l'analyse, la modélisation des données de base en termes de pollution, et de développer les capacités locales pour la surveillance de la qualité de l'air, qui, bien sûr, est affectée par le transport, mais affectée aussi par les déchets, et ainsi de préparer des études de faisabilité qui, comme je le disais, nous permettront, dans un deuxième temps, de financer les investissements nécessaires. Je souhaitais préciser également ou donner également à l'audience l'exemple du partenariat que nous portons grâce à des fonds délégués de l'Union européenne avec la Convention des maires en Afrique subsaharienne, la COMESSA, qui, grâce à notre filiale Expertise France, une filiale du groupe AFD, porte des actions de mise en réseau de 178 villes. Donc, nous sommes aussi acteurs de cette facilité. Vous en citez encore deux, je ne veux pas être trop long. Le partenariat que nous avons aujourd'hui avec la Fédération nationale des agences urbaines, d'urbanisme, avec laquelle nous organisons régulièrement des webinaires. Alors, vous me direz, ce n'est pas tout à fait la mise en relation physique de villes, mais à travers ces webinaires, nous invitons des partenaires du Sud, des villes du Sud, des villes françaises, donc à travers cette Fédération nationale des agences d'urbanisme de villes françaises, et l'animation est assurée donc par des pairs de part et d'autre, au Sud et au Nord. Alors, citons peut-être à titre d'exemple la série de webinaires que nous avons lancée sur les enjeux de gestion du littoral et de l'habitat résilient, qui permet à des collectivités locales, je le parlais tout à l'heure, de l'outre-mer français, d'interagir avec des collectivités locales dans le monde entier. Et je souhaiterais juste peut-être finir, pardon d'avoir été long, par vous partager aussi une expérience qui nous semble tout à fait opportune, pertinente et importante pour mettre en relation des villes. Ce sont les voyages d'études que nous accueillons régulièrement dans le cadre de projets que nous appuyons et qui permettent de renforcer la relation entre les acteurs urbains français et les acteurs urbains des villes que nous finançons et que nous accompagnons. Exemple, pas plus tard qu'il y a 2 semaines, nous avons accueilli une délégation du Kerala, de l'État du Kerala en Inde, pour apprendre de l'expérience des villes de Bordeaux, de Biscarrosse et de Bièvre en matière de gestion des risques d'inondation et des risques littoraux. Donc voilà encore un exemple par lequel nous participons à la mise en réseau de ces villes. Voilà, je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hervé, for all this very concrete example and mechanism that I'm sure will inspire many others in the room. So we are running a little bit behind, but I already see that there are some flags in the room. So we'll start with VVSG, please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Hanne. I work for the Association of Flemish Cities and Municipalities. I've heard a lot of talk about smaller and intermediate cities, but I'm wondering, what are we talking about when we say smaller and intermediate cities? Just to give an example, in Flanders, municipalities with more than 100,000 inhabitants are the exception. The average is about 20 to 30,000 inhabitants. So I have a question that is primarily directed towards Marlène. We often feel that these kind of cities who also engage in DDC are not on the radar of institutions like the European Union, European Commission. I was just wondering, is that so? Are we correct in that sense that these kind of smaller cities are not on the radar? And if I'm not correct, what can these kind of cities do to access things like the Global Gateway in a more effective way?
Yeah, that is a very difficult question you're asking me. As it was, said before, yes, it is true that Global Gateway is about big infrastructure projects, but for me, the interest and the fascinating thing is that this is just the core, the nucleus, right? So it's a big infrastructure, or it is vaccine production. And around this, we have many small projects that we can develop. There's a lot which is not really has to do with money. We talk about new regulations in terms of environment. If we talk vaccine, in Rwanda, we talk about capacity building for an authority that actually will monitor whether the vaccination which is produced in Rwanda has a certain standard. It's about prices. So I do believe that in this setting, around this, there is room for cities. If you ask me about the money for European cities and the decentralized cooperation, unfortunately, I have to say that we were not given a budget for helping this city-to-city cooperation in the 7-year term that we have now, 21 to 27, because Parliament, the member states, I also have to say your member states, did not give this money to me. So for the moment, what I'm referring to is a project and the money that was before. The plea is, please also talk to your member states so that in the next cycle, which will be 28, 7 or plus 5, that we will again have a thematic budget, because then it will be easier for us to finance them, because then it would be ring-fenced to decentralized cooperation. And my colleague who is here, who is in charge of managing the old project, the size of the city is not decisive. If we manage it in HQ and everybody can then participate to a call, and the size as such is not important.
Thank you, Marlène. Thank you, Marlene, very clear. Let me take the last two questions together, and then we go to the panelists. So we can start with Siegfried. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I have a more technical question. Improving energy efficiency is still a huge underutilized and in many cases very cheap energy resource. And performance contracting can often help mobilizing these energy efficiency potentials. The basic idea, of course, is that the private investor improves energy efficiency using its own financing options, and the investment then being repaid by the money saved through the energy saved. Otherwise, it would have been burned. It's some 4 years ago that I was involved in my last project of that kind in the EBRD Western Balkans Energy Efficiency Program. And at that time, quite often municipal finance officers had a problem using funds earmarked for paying for energy running expenses for financing investment. And it has been of lengthy discussions. It can be done, it has been done, but it was lengthy discussions and the outcome was always uncertain and always worried financing officers were surrounding us. So is there a way that formally facilitates this budget operation where you use funds earmarked for running expenses for investment and make that operation more handleable, more usable, more comfortable for budget officers?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Keith, please.
Thank you. This is more of a comment rather than a question, but I'm very conscious there have been no UK cities represented at this event. And as a former central government official, I just thought I should mention briefly what's happening in terms of city-to-city partnerships in the UK. There are two things I was going to mention. One is UK Cities and Partners, or UCAP, UKCAP. It's a group of the most prominent UK cities and regions and private sector organisations to share a joint mission to engage and support investors looking to invest in scale across the UK. And they've developed a £100 billion pipeline of investment opportunities. They work very closely with central government as well to deliver the UK's growth agenda. But they include a lot of the really major cities in the UK, like London, Manchester, Newcastle, Bristol, Bath, Liverpool, Oxford, Cambridge. And they hold regular events both in the UK and overseas, but I think it highlights the role that city-to-city partnerships can play in trying to attract investment to not only their own region or area, but others as well. So I think they can play a crucial role in marketing what the cities have to offer internationally. There's also a UK Core Cities Group, which is an alliance of the 12 largest UK cities, that again aims to unlock their potential. And they interestingly funded a 2020 OECD report on city productivity that's actually been used as a benchmark across the sector. So there is potential for groups of cities to come together and get the OECD to do work for them as well. So I think it's very important to have this wider dimension. It's not just about working with your neighbours, but even cities in the wider country to try and build a stronger economy that benefits everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Keith. I think we can continue the discussion over the coffee break with our panelists and in the next session, because it will be very much connected. We are running a bit out of time, but we really want to give the time that our discussants deserve for the conclusion. I would like to give the floor. We are really honored to have Patrick Legalet, Research Director at CNRS, the National Center for Scientific Research, and Professor at Science Po. So, Patrick, tell us what you think. What are your thoughts, reflections based on the panel discussion, please?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks, Stefano, for this stimulating panel. Lots of activities going on here. And also thanks for this report, which is really a great report. And I invite everybody to read that. Clearly, this is a good time to think along those things. As you have seen from the two sessions, this city-to-city partnership are gaining momentum. And we see all these new initiatives. We see the EU Gateway as your major change. We also see investment banks playing a more important role and gaining traction in financing more and more local authorities and projects. We see more and more cities and local authorities playing a role and trying to develop projects and to gain finance. And we see, of course, the opportunity, in a way, the risk of climate change obliging everybody to change, to get out of a comfort zone and to think about different ways in terms of investment, planning, or decarbonation. So we've heard from a different example this morning, all the activities going on in this domain, and that's very impressive and interesting that we see. Allow me to push a little bit everybody a bit further to think along those things. The first things I want to emphasize on finance is the following. Well, actually, there's no shortage of money around the world. Actually, there's a huge amount of money around the world. The problem is having the rules to access it, and you mentioned that in the report, but also the conditions under which you have access to that. And I think it would be useful also to think that very often there's competition, many big projects for local authorities, sometimes small ones too. There's a competition of funds. There are some, there's an elephant in the room. Nobody mentioned China this morning. There's a huge investment from China in different parts of local authorities. There are many investment banks from different countries in competition to get this money. I'm sure the AfD has known many cases where sometimes they made some offer for some big project and another investment bank comes and finance at different conditions. So I think it would be interesting to be more precise on the competition between those different groups and to see the consequence of using. I think the report, and it was mentioned this morning, does a great job to underline the different financial tools that may be used. It's also interesting to understand that those tools are not neutral. And sometimes there are some consequences. And I think it'd be interesting for us to think about the strange attach to those finance. Think about, we have a good example, which is in the report, which is financialization of housing. We have seen a lot of experiments of financializing housing, maybe in the UK, for instance, as was mentioned, and we see the result. We see also that sometimes when you write with some banks, you manage to do some very interesting project for long term, but sometimes you see some bias progressively where you finance one type of housing, some others are being sidelined. So there's some long-term effect of some of those instruments, but it would be worth comparing more systematically. And I think it would be interesting because we also know that, in my world, we say public policy is about implementation. And I fear that sometimes concentrating too much on gaining finance, sometimes we sort of forget at which conditions the implementation is taking place. If I can mock my own discipline in research, some of my colleagues, they spend a lot of time gaining access to finance. They do finance projects all the time. But what is the quality of the research being done is a real research question sometimes. And I think that should be central. We should also remember at the implementation stage that when you think about those financial tools, some groups develop veto capacity. So there are also power relationships changing in those cities and local authorities. And I think looking at those veto group is an important part for the work being done. My second point, very briefly, is to emphasize this coordination element that was emphasized and capability. And I will be very brief. Everybody's right on emphasizing technical expertise, the capability. But can I emphasize that it's also a political issue, and on even access to finance has also consequence between the losers and the winners. So the way, the problem sometimes with financing this big project is that some groups gain access to information and capacity to deliver this project, and some may not gain that. So I think emphasizing this power dimension and democratic issues is a very important thing. I know of cases in cities in Europe or Africa where the access to finance was wonderful to finance small or big projects, but the consequences were very strong in terms of who were the losers and the winners. And I think it's this distribution consequence should be much more central. It's not just a question of capability and technical expertise. It's also questions of collective action capacity and power redistribution. And we should affirm that directly and not pretending it doesn't exist. Same thing for coordination. On the political element, can I emphasize that I'm sometimes slightly frustrated by the definition of goals. Do you know any big project or public policy where you don't say it's about sustainability, social cohesion, economic competitiveness. Thank you. Okay, and we have myriads of consultants in the world able to reframe any project along those three goals. So I think at some point we should be able to say some goals are not so clear and be much more precise on the goals. I think there's some work to be done along those lines that might be useful for this thing. And my last point would be to emphasize that all these activities is very, very important now, but we also have examples of failures. And I think it would be good at some point to take stock of that in order to move forward and to be more precise on the conditions under which this finance may have access and may deliver some of the collective goods that we expect. Because I know many projects around the world where, the collective good being produced was not very impressive, or some major stakeholder groups were marginalized. So it's important to really think along those lines, I would say, in the same way. The last point is that financialization, it's also something that this access to finance, the finance sector and the private sector, and I finish on that, it's a very different world. So I think really emphasizing the dynamism of investment banks and their renewed is a very important part. It's not the same thing to have access to the development bank, to have access to shadow banking, to have access to sovereign funds, or to have access to some. So I think it should be also important for local authorities to have some expertise on which are the good financial organizations for the project they add from the bad ones that we know. And from bad idea, I wonder whether for the OECD it'd be interesting to try to, as you always do, accumulate, because there are lots of experiments that are small and don't go anywhere. Some are small and very interesting. So how do we change this? We scale up the important result and the interesting that you do very well usually. And I think trying to gain and to clear about what doesn't work should also be part of our project. Thank you very much, and thanks for this very...
Thank you, Patrick. Really very inspiring, many ideas. I think you gave us many ideas for the next project that we can do on this topic. Now we really need to close, but before that, I really want to thank our partner, the co-host of this session, DG INPA and the CEB for co-hosting this session with us. And then a big, we can give a big round of applause to all our panelists.